organization, these aspects were very, very topical. Thank you very much. Now, Biman, who's our next speaker?
Indranil, please.
Indranil Manna. Dr. Indranil Manna, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Professor Ray. Good evening to my peers. I guess in this forum, apart from Suman, all are senior to me. So certainly a pleasure to share the platform with very eminent speakers and also very illustrious alumni of Bengal Engineering College. I thought the entire discussion was to be a panel discussion. I wasn't aware that it's going to be a seminar presentation. So of course I didn't plan that way. And time is truly running out, so I'll be very brief as possible. My first submission would be that instead of going through a very difficult etymological approach of defining science, engineering, technology, I would, from my perspective, I would simply say that science is nothing but know why, the fundamental question. If you have a hot body, why should heat actually radiate out or conduct towards the colder part? Without worrying about whether that is of any use somewhere in some specific application. Similarly, if you apply potential difference, electron flows from the one particular end to the other end, and during that flow, there could be certain loss of energy. Why does it happen? So these are all fundamental questions, and that's exactly science is. Engineering is know-how. How do you actually leverage to the fundamental knowledge, translate that into societal goods, some kind of a process or a product, which certainly accrues benefit to the society. And technology is the last mile, which actually is able to not only replicate, but also bring the fruits of these inventions and discoveries to the common masses as at an affordable price, without violating the rules and regulations of the country, without endangering the ecology and environment, and also make it viable. Now, in this cycle, there is no hierarchy. There's no necessity that science has to give rise to engineering and engineering to technology. In fact, it's actually these three entities certainly complement into each other, and they're related through a very closed loop or a closed cycle. While Faraday, once he showed that electrons flow down the potential difference and that causes electrical current, we had to wait for the genius of Edison to come and show that this is how you can produce incandescent light. And applications of electrical current in the form of either motor or transportation devices took much longer time. Similarly, we all know that Newton defined the laws of gravity and also gave birth to the idea as to how one can defy the laws of gravity. And eventually, it took again more than 2 decades beyond Da Vinci to show that the flying machine that Da Vinci drew could actually be realized by the efforts of the Wright brothers. So that's usually the progression of science to engineering to technology. But I'll give a counter evidence. Einstein predicted existence of the gravitational wave, 1916. It took exactly 100 years for the humanity to prove that gravitational wave does exist. And for that, we had to wait for the creation of LIGO, which is purely a technological marvel. Similarly, in our subject domain, materials engineering or metallurgical engineering, we all heard about the phenomenon of age hardening and the existence of crystalline defects and so on. They all were predicted, and based on those predictions, certain phenomena were explained, but the evidence came much later, at least a few decades later, until the electron microscope was discovered and practiced. So there's no particular sequence in which these progressions happen. They actually feed into each other, complement into each other. The second point I want to mention is that certainly not in 1856, not even in 1956, Bengal Engineering College was meant to be a research university. There were examples, not necessarily in this country, even in this country, where engineering as a professional course also had quite a bit of research input. But the way from civil engineering to Bengal Engineering College transformed, the focus certainly was in producing high quality engineers. In fact, if one runs into the Act of Parliament 1961, by virtue of which IITs came into being, even there also, there was no mention about extraordinary emphasis on research. Essentially, it was meant to produce the best quality scientists and engineers in the country. Now then, why do we need research? And more importantly, why is it so much more relevant today? It's for one single argument. If knowledge is a coin, it has two sides. One part is dissemination or teaching. But unless you supplement, unless you add on, then the body of knowledge remains a static entity and becomes redundant in the wake of newer challenges or newer developments. So while we know very well that this country had the privilege of having the pioneers in the form of Kanad and Aryabhatta and Shushruth and so on, so not just in atomic physics, but in numerical sciences, in medical sciences, who were certainly not pioneers and way ahead of the rest of the world, but we lost the race in between. And we already heard that during the course of Industrial Revolution, we certainly were not doing enough. And as a result, we lagged way behind. So 1856 or 1956, Bengal Engineering College was primarily a teaching institution. Obviously, there were individuals, there were pockets, which certainly have left behind evidences of high quality research. And even in 1983, when I graduated, there were individuals, faculty members who were already well known in their field as very established researchers, but that wasn't the main culture. So over a period of time, the situation that we are in today is, the reality is that we admit top quality students. And in my opinion, year on year, the quality of students only improves and not deteriorates. So if we are not able to derive the best benefit out of them, the onus lies on us. Despite having better quality of feed, why is our ranking slipping? And I think that's one of the major focus. So I would rather spend the rest of the time on that. Repositioning is a very important phrase that is part of our title of discussion today. Repositioning is needed because one side of the coin, which I said is teaching, the other side obviously has to be creation of knowledge or research. And that's one part which probably wasn't in the focus, not to the extent desired. If you go by the number of publications, number of PhD theses produced, number of scholars existing in the system in, say, in the last 50 years, we certainly don't compare with the top institutions, so-called top institutions in the country. So not that BE College wasn't teaching well or isn't teaching well, possibly still are doing well, as good as any other institution, but we haven't been able to reposition ourselves. And that would require a very major shift in our priorities. Say, for example, it's not enough just to, I mean, if you burden a teacher with 15 or 20 hours of teaching per week, then, and on top of that, if you expect that individual to produce excellent research output, I think we are asking for too much. So on the other hand, with just about a few thousand, not even 5,000 students, I think that I am not quite sure the total student population in the IIEST system today probably will be just a couple of thousand. So that's a subcritical number, inadequate to make any impact in the research field, be it through a. If you want to expand, you need more infrastructure, buildings, floors, laboratories, equipments, housing for faculty members, students to live in good hostels, and amenities. So all these would require us to expand. Now, we know very well that we are completely confined within a very small land parcel. The only way is vertical expansion. I don't know how far that's going to be possible, but unless you create a new floor, you cannot tear down an existing building. So there we have a limitation. One possibility could be to move out, to go to another place, and then get a wider campus and then build there. One other very important thing is that the success parameters or the yardsticks we have followed over the years also has led to research, not so much possibly in IIST, but even other institutions. If we have to talk about one good thing about Indian science and technology today, I mean, a point to gloat about would be the fact that India probably even today ranks among the top 4 nations in terms of number of publications, number of citations, and publication or citation per researcher. So that's an index which is fairly glorious, but then this research is mostly directed towards fundamental aspects, which essentially explains phenomenon, explains creation of new materials or new devices and so on, but not necessarily able to be translated directly into a product. So what we need is not just research, but not fundamental research, but translational research. Government of India did undertake a very major initiative in this respect. I personally was privy to that initiative. It's called Impacting Research, Innovation and Technology Imprint. 500 crore in 2 rounds in each. So about over 1,000 crore was brought to the table, distributed to all major institutions in the country in the higher education sphere. And in about 3.5 years, 2015, November 5th, this was launched by the topmost leadership of the country, the Honorable President and the Prime Minister. And in 2019, I think it was in August, there was an exhibition in IIT Delhi. 80 prototypes were demonstrated, which some of these were already working models. I'm not sure because I'm no longer at the helm, so I don't know how many of them actually has reached the market. Even if 5% of them, we funded about 150 in each round, so maybe out of 300, if 30 of them, in fact, Suman also had one of the funded projects from that. If 5 or 10% of them goes to a field trial level, then we certainly have done enough to change the culture of research in this country. And this is very important for all of us to understand. So if IIST really has to compete, we must expand, we must have many more students, many more faculty members, lot better infrastructure, and to make this expansion possible, we need a lot of fund flow. And that's not going to be easy. Now, often we hear a harangue that in this country, money is not a problem. And I often hold my own personal view that money is the problem. And there are multiple reasons. I save it for another day. Now,
Indranil, your image got frozen.
People. And average age is around 30. So we are one of the youngest nation in the world. GDP-wise, nominal, we are at the 5th position. In purchase parity wise, we are at the 3rd position. We have the, in number of things, for example, we are the 4th largest. Many of us wouldn't probably know that India not only imports cars, happens to be the 4th largest producer of automobiles in the whole world. In terms of steel, cement, so the largest manufacturer of aluminum today happens to be an Indian company. The largest manufacturer of forging products is an Indian company. We are the largest exporters of handicrafts.
Indranil, you might opt to
There are
turn off
many
the
other
video.
things.
Yeah.
So these are the good sides which make us feel very pro. Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
what I was suggesting, sometimes
Hey,
you get
Hassan,
you can
you are
turn
the
off the
computer
video.
guy. Hassan,
Yeah.
you are the computer guy. Can you set
No,
this
no, no.
right?
He turned
I
off the
think-
video. Tathagata,
Yeah,
it should be
I think
all
the
right.
bandwidth problem, he can turn off the video. Yeah, now I think we can hear him clearly.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I should wind up now. So the important point is, on the flip side, we also must realize that India does not necessarily occupy a very
It's not helping.
I think it's because of the internet connectivity issue at his end.
Yeah, we just give him 1 more minute, Tathagata, then probably we have to move on with Suman.
I would suggest everybody to
human
just
development index in terms
turn
of
their video off.
global-
Everybody should turn their video off. That might help.
But
Indranil is back.
I think there is some difficulty. I'll close here. Thank you very much. But Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, 9 o'clock, I actually am committed for something. So I'll have to exit, and I would leave the floor to Suman to carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Indranil. That was a very illuminating talk. In fact, this is the first time I'm hearing Indranil talk, and he's so convincing and with such a fresh point of view, particularly as regards research and the progression of science, technology, and science, engineering, and technology. He demonstrated that it is possible to have a reverse progression, which is not a thing that had struck any of us at any other point of time. The next person is Biman. Who is the next person? The
Yeah,
last
we have
person.
Suman, Professor Suman Chakraborty from IIT Kharagpur. Yeah.
Right, right. Suman Chakraborty is the last speaker of the evening. It's getting quite late in India. So, Suman, the floor is yours.
Yeah, first of all, I deeply acknowledge and appreciate this kind invitation to a forum where not only I am not quote unquote alumnus of the institute, and also everybody who is sitting here are either my teachers or teachers of teachers. So in that way, it has been really a great privilege and honor. Although I have not been a student of BE College or IIEST, I have got excellent mentors throughout my career, starting from Professor Amitabha Ghosh, late Professor S.K. Shom, Professor Indranil Manna, and even my teachers from Jadavpur University, many of them, including the legendary Professor Tathagata Ray sitting here. I have been a great follower of Professor Roy when I was an undergraduate student, of course, in mechanical engineering department at Jadavpur University. And my teacher, Professor Sudipto De, who is sitting in this forum, who was my teacher at Jadavpur University. So all in all, I think that, with all the deliberations, and, I am the last batsman of any, these innings, and last batsmen are not really that capable. And because time is also running out, now what I will present is something which I think that I have the right to do, that present the perspective of a student. When we are talking about repositioning, restructuring, etc. So first of all, I think I am not really that competent to talk about repositioning of IIEST. Rather, if at all I talk about something, I would talk about repositioning of the engineering education system, or our academic institutions as a whole, where I would not isolate IITs as the great the institutions in that respect. Well, IITs are doing well, but still lagging far apart from where globally what is needed and what is envisioned. So in that way, my proposition and humble submission as a student and as a, a person in engineering education and research is something which is a bit more holistic and doesn't consider IIEST as a standalone institution, but overall as a recommendation. I was trying to share my presentation, but I'm not getting an authority to share my presentation. I do not know what has happened.
No, Hashan, you can get started with Professor Chakraborty's presentation if he's not able to share.
Somehow, something is happening where
No,
I'm not
I
able to
think
put up
Professor Chakraborty, it had happened to Professor Ghosh as well at the very, very first time when he was starting to doing that. So
Second
just
time
try
we
one
tried
more
it
time.
now.
Yeah, I think that I think it will be possible. Hopefully, it
Yeah,
has come.
We do see your presentation, sir.
Yeah, so I have made it full screen, and I will quickly, go through this. So first of all, if I talk about that, what are the expectations from modern day engineers, and also the different boundary conditions and constraints. Well, we all need sufficiently sound theoretical background to cope with the future engineering challenges, and this remains invariant. I'm sure when Professor Amitabha Ghosh was teaching his classes, and now our students who are faculty members teach their classes, there is absolutely no compromise in the theoretical background. But at the same time, we need to understand how technology works so that the students can be shaped as effective innovators and creators. And that is where the need of soft skills, such as the ability to communicate their technical ideas and concepts, and galvanize a wide array of people, including those without technological backgrounds and people from other cultures. This is something that I believe that the majority of our curriculum, where we develop syllabus to cover materials, that appears to be grossly missing. And why that is important? Because as modern engineers, we have to have the ability to be lifelong learners. Forget about very senior generation scholars who are sitting here. Even in my student life, I am not that senior as all of you. But whatever I have taught and whatever research and even teaching I am doing now, there is a very little correlation, except some of the very strong foundation knowledge. And it also gives rise to the need of inclusive education through enough social and business training to enable them to succeed in administrative and managerial functions and respond to societal needs. And of course, one such very important aspect is the preparedness to face and overcome the challenges that may rise from time to time. Well, when we talk about, these are perhaps the expectations from modern day engineers, and education in engineering should be aligned with that. We must also not forget the students' perspective. Students in the present days already have access to teaching materials of high standards, so that classroom teaching may turn out to be completely redundant to them. I can remember that when even we were students, we were greatly sort of following and greatly in need of the notes or the materials which were covered by the teachers in the class. Now, many of our friends did not also have the purchasing power to purchase very good books. So we were strongly depending on the notes. But now, with this advent of the MOOCs platform and NPTEL in India and several other online open courses and materials, those kinds of things are simply not needed by any student. And what they need is additional insight between lines. And I'm afraid that we are still trying to teach in the same way as it has been done over the years. But one need to look into this student-centric approach. Progressively reducing attention spans of students, and even us, like many of us and many of our students who used to listen to long lectures, now after 10-15 minutes we feel restless, because we are always almost following gadgets, and that has reduced our attention span. it is a global problem, and it is not something with which we can do much. But therefore, there is a strong need for innovative design of education modules, capsules, storytelling episodes, etc., which can focus on maybe one concept, one module, and that is how can stimulate the minds of students. Addiction to electronic gadgets, we all complain about, starting from school children to advanced college students. But this challenge may actually be converted to opportunities by designing education and research modules and connected education and research modules where smartphone comes in a big way. Now, having said that, what we can do much about this in the curriculum framework. The traditional first-year courses on math, science, computing are all designed to build fundamental technical skills and are necessary. And these should not be compromised according to my opinion. But also there has to be different area of breadth courses. Breadth courses have been made available in every good university, but that has to be dynamically changing now. More emphasis on promoting environmental, economic, and global awareness, problem-solving ability, engagement with information technology, self-directed learning, and lifelong learning communication. Because what they are going to learn today in the university may be redundant in terms of the contents, but in the spirit, it can help them to acquire skills for lifelong learning. Management and teamwork skills, but all on a sound base of mathematics and logic applied, and not like I would say over descriptive framework. So STEM of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is now giving way to STEAM: science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. In the past, engineers often had to resort only to the first principles to tackle problems. Now, of course, first principles are equally important, but problem solving may take place at a higher level, and therefore there is a need of introducing engineering tools for tackling real world problems as early as possible in the curriculum. And also, there is perhaps a good idea to introduce a component on engineering without borders, what we call as interdisciplinary study. This is a simplified way of presenting it, and many of the universities outside are adopting this. For example, this could be a project aimed to bring electricity or affordable healthcare to a remote village. And this may naturally inculcate interdisciplinary engineering, basic sciences, social science and awareness, economics, communication, and even political skills, instead of having dry theoretical courses advocating them separately. And also having joint courses with other units that have special applications for engineers. For example, a business to innovation program on materials and processes that applies to across disciplines, design for manufacturing, lab to market translation, and so many other things where we can really have engagement of various stakeholders. Now, some of my speakers and previous speakers talked about research and teaching together. And research integrated teaching is, I think, that can make not only research improved, but also teaching improved. While it may be apparently believed that good teaching can be done without research, but there are commonalities. Research promotes a tolerance of ambiguity and uncertainty. A number of skills can be identified which can acquire directly from active engagement in research. For example, learning how to put information down into a precise form, the ability to turn a hunch into a theory, asking the right questions and applying methodologies effectively, and address open-ended problems, not the textbook problems which have one problem, one answer. Therefore, it could be a good idea to establish research integrated education centers, focusing on both interdisciplinary research and integration of research and education. On the other side, focus is moving from faculty and their teaching to students and their learning to the enormous role of students in this transformation process. And students are now effective champions of advancing knowledge. And that, to engage them more, one could have a variety of innovative pedagogical approaches, including a first-year design and do-it-yourself course. It is, at IIT Kharagpur, we have introduced this, and it is, of course, it is being perceived with different levels of understanding and criticism, but students are at least being engaged in cooperative learning, and also they are trying to, they are being almost enforced to adopt technology-enhanced education and distance learning into the ambit of these kind of do-it-yourself courses. And this was actually done in the COVID pandemic online, era, when the students could not physically come to campus, but they could by themselves, through the online interaction, get engaged into this. And more advanced versions of these kinds of courses could be made possible with the engagement of experts in educational technology and other disciplines. Of course, the point of use of say computation and data sciences or information technology, this point came into discussion. I do not want to elaborate it further, but this is something which will ensure that there is again a lifelong learning. At its simplest form, the computer frees the engineer from tedious repetitive calculations, while at its most complex, it allows him or her to construct models simulating the real world quickly and easily. And there is enormous potential for web-enabled learning or e-learning, where many of the e-learning platforms may be integrated to many of the engineering simulation platforms, and combining both physics and data, which nowadays is called as physics-informed data science. And students having access to supplemental multimedia materials covering these and simulation environments may actually synthesize education much better than students who do not have access to such materials. Not only that, students can, using such technologies, courses can be tailored to suit the needs of the individual students dynamically, and the students may be free to go through self-paced learning programs. To summarize my humble submission, what I would really envisage is inclusive and holistic components in the education with both contents and practices. At the same time, there is a danger of sort of overruling all the good things that have been there, starting from the classical foundation basis of engineering education. So it is better to refrain from hyperactive acts of modernization at the expense of the foundation classics engineering foundation courses. Conduct an institutional and unit-wise self-assessment. I think it is just not just relevant for IIEST, but for all organizations. Readdress the imbalances in the faculty incentive system. I think there is a great imbalance in the faculty incentive system. Improvise teaching methods and practices. A balance of the traditional and the emerging paradigms. That is a balance of the classical chalk and talk, which is so good for explaining many of the things, as well as the emerging paradigms. Ensure that the curriculum supports the institution's strategic plan. It is very, very important, whatever may be the strategic plan, to be leaders in certain areas, that must be emphasized in the curriculum. Expand the beneficial interactions and outreach. Think globally, but act locally. This is, I think, the motto that I always believe true. Over the years, I think where our Indian system has faltered so much that whatever the Western system has introduced, we have tried to show that ourselves very modern by adapting to that. Well, we should think globally, but science being universal, technology is very local. We have tremendous collections of outstanding problems that engineering can solve, be it healthcare, be it energy, water, for the underserved communities in and around India and elsewhere. So if we look into that and maybe develop a research-centric curriculum around that, I think we would be not just IIEST, but any Indian institution may place itself as one of the global leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suman. It's been a pleasure being a moderator in this particular. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, Tathagata, you're fine.
Okay, okay. It's been a pleasure being a moderator in this panel discussion. I wish we had more time, as happens in every good panel discussion. One always wishes that one had more time so that more questions could be answered. Also, this panel, this is not really a panel discussion. What we have had is a course of lectures by the 5 very erudite persons. Be that as it may, I think I am echoing the words of the minds of all the entire audience over here, that we have been hugely enlightened by what we have heard over here. I would thank Biman, of course, and particularly Shama, who's been the driving force behind this entire effort. And I'd request Shama to organize a similar discussion sometime later, perhaps on a slightly different format, but with a subject as interesting as this. With these words, it's quite late in India now, it's 9:15 p.m. So we have to draw the discussion to an end. Biman, if you want to say something more, you are welcome.
Thank you, Tathagata. Thanks, everybody. I'd leave the floor to our General Secretary, Shitangshu Shekhar Ghosh, 1980 Mechanical. And before that, just one quick word for our anchor, Hashan. Please capture the chat, and depending on the topic, later on, we have to put it to individual panelists and get a response coming back from them. And for the people who put question here, sorry, we cannot take it any longer, but I'm sure individual speakers will get back to you at due course. With that, I invite Engineer Shitangshu Shekhar Ghosh, 1980 Mechanical, our General Secretary, to come and propose a formal vote of thanks.
On behalf of GAABESU, I really congratulate the panel discussion held today by the panelists, particularly our Professor Amitabha Ghosh, Shri Amitabha Bhattacharya, my brother Indranil Manna, Shri Gautam Ray, and also Professor Suman Chakraborty. Particularly, today's enlightened discussion has started a new horizon for our thinking. And Professor Ghosh initially started his discussion as he's the man who was behind making the IIEST. I am also thankful to moderator, Professor Tathagata Ray. Everybody knows that the Tathagata. He is a very good orator, and as well as he is acceptable to all of us for his fine speeches, different time. Thanks to Biman Ghosh, who has particular time, particularly he is not in India, but he has made his time for this discussion. I am also thankful to the audience who are specially hearing all the things, and it is really a very delighted discussion today. On behalf of GAABESU, I thanks all the participants as well as my office staff, and particularly Olunda, who is also sitting here just hearing all this thing, Shamada, who is the main man behind it, already Tathagata informed us. Last but not the least, I request all of you to be present tomorrow, 25th December, for our Alumni Day. And just 1 hour back, I am coming from the venue. Every arrangement has been made, and your presence will definitely boost us for doing such thing in future. Moreover, last 2 years, we are unable to do it in person. But this year, after 2 years, we'll do this gathering, Alumni Day. And this is the part of the Alumni Day today discussion. I thank all of you. Thanks to all.
Thank you, Shitangshuda. And that brings up to the end of this today's session. So see you all, whoever can, at the campus tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Good night.